Are you looking for a dark and gritty campaign to unleash on your players? Do you enjoy difficult combat encounters that push players to overcome seemingly impossible odds? Is detailed lore hidden throughout an open world appealing to you as a player and a DM? That is what I hope to achieve during this guide. This is my second campaign based off a video game. You can find my Ocarina of Time playthrough, and just like that, it's not a one-on-one representation of the games. D&D is meant to be more than just an action RPG in the sense that your players will think of things that you just couldn't imagine or prepare for as the DM. There are a few key things that make Dark Souls appealing, and so here's what I wish to accomplish in this game. The comparison of Dark Souls and D&D, well, welcome to the Lord of Lordran. There's a few ways we can go about in making sure that your character fits into the world of Dark Souls. First off, let's start by what did you do in your previous life? Do you even remember what you were? We're going to be starting this campaign in the undead asylum just like we would in Dark Souls, and you and your allies will need to figure out a way to escape. How did you even get brought to the undead asylum, and was there any groups that you're affiliated with that may have helped you in this escape? So, for example, I have my knight here with a starting gift of a pendant, something to keep him focused, to remember his past life, an heirloom from a loved one perhaps. Classes are dependent on the players. Obviously a balanced team is always good, but in this case this would be a fighter for me. Warriors are fighters as well, probably, maybe a barbarian. Wanderers, thieves, bandits. I mean, you can make these out. You can even homebrew some classes if you want, but honestly, the game works well as just running true D&D. You don't need custom classes or picks, but there will be a lot of homebrew items to make this feel Dark Soulsy. Are you a warrior for dragons, fighting with honor, dueling those who wish to seek their glory in combat? Or are you a champion of the dark and a lord of the abyss, fighter for those and looking to plunge the world into darkness? Do you serve those who can't quite defend themselves and wish to bring peace to those who have sacrificed everything for others? Whichever covenant you choose for your players, or that your players choose for themselves, should allow a bunch of different role-playing opportunities. So, for example, I give each of my players a brief description of these covenants, letting them kind of pick and seeing what sounds right. You want to work with your characters and figure out what kind of backstory they want and see if they can fit into a covenant. At worst case, make up your own. Find one that will fit if you can, otherwise have them build up their own clan, have them build up their own guild or covenants that they're dedicated to. So what makes Dark Souls good to turn into a Dungeons & Dragons campaign? My opinion, it has some of the best boss fights of any video game, and I wanted to interpret those into my campaigns of Dungeons & Dragons. With that said, the boss fights and encounters need to be fair. No matter how good you get, no level 1 party is taking on a Balrog. So, it's important to make sure that the players feel challenged, but you want to make sure that the encounters are fair to them. A really good example of this is the Asylum Demon in the Undead Asylum, and that will be our first boss that we'll go over today. But before that, let's talk about souls, the currency of the game. This is a great design that my players have seemed to love. Your souls is your experience and your gold. The players only need to really keep track of one thing, and that is their soul count. That allows players to level up as they wish, which you can do so at Bonfires, which we'll talk about. And it gives players the intense feeling of, oh crap, we might die. We can't lose our souls. We can't lose our experience. Now, with that said, if a party is TPK'd, any souls in their inventory are lost for good. Unlike in Dark Souls, where you can go back and recover them, I found it in testing that that's not there's really no risk reward kind of thing. People are going to rush back to the area map and quickly grab their souls. I want to make sure they feel that death is bad, I guess. It needs to be a punishment for death. And losing your soul count, I think, is a very good punishment without being crippling to the players. Now, you're more than welcome to disagree with me and build your campaign how you want, but in my game and through testing, I have found that this is a good way to balance the amount of fighting, with the leveling, with the resting, and everything. Death and hollowing. This is perhaps the biggest change. The campaign is designed with the idea that players will likely die. However, just like any campaign, DM versus player mentality needs to go out the door. Your players are already on a high alert. You're playing a Dark Souls themed campaign. Dark Souls is notorious for difficulty. So, we want to be fair. When a player dies, they accumulate a point towards going hollow. Those who are familiar with hollowing in Dark Souls, well, if you go hollow, you lose your mind, you lose your soul, and you're permanently gone. The idea of hollowing stands out really well, that when a player quits Dark Souls without beating it and never returns, that player went hollow. They couldn't fulfill the mission, they couldn't fulfill their prophecy, and so, similar to what we do with the Dark Souls campaign, that's how we would play this game out. Now, the death penalty. You start off with either one death, since you're in the Bergs, or the undead asylum. There's probably a reason for it. But when you die, you take on the appearance of a hollow. NPCs are probably going to react to you differently, seeing as you corroded and losing pigment in your skin. Looking hollow is a lot different versus, say, somebody who's not. Like, I don't know about you, but if I see this guy versus a normal person, I'm probably going to freak out a little bit. He's a little scary looking. But that is the curse of undeath. From going hollow, the second death, I have my players roll on a short-term madness scale. Something to give them to roleplay the experience. They just came back from death. Can they keep their minds? Are they ready? The third death, the players will gain a permanent flaw to their character. They'll roll on the long-term madness table and gain a flaw for that, and that is how they would have to roleplay their character going forward. On the fourth death, your player cannot handle anymore and they have gone hollow. That is game over for that character. Now, you can reverse those hollowing stages by collecting humanities. I make it pretty fair, as humanity is very coveted by merchants, enemies, and players, on being able to get a good amount of them, as you will probably have to make choices of, should I use this humanity on myself, or trade it for a rare item that will help protect my allies. The choice, of course, comes down to the players, and I think that's the theme of just giving the players the choice to do what they need to do. From there, we go into our bonfires. Bonfires are the safe zones that players can take a long rest at. Unlike the Dark Souls video games, enemies do not respawn. Trust me, it's a grind fest if you decide, hey, let's have all the enemies respawn every single time the players rest. What I do to counteract players from just resting at a bonfire every single encounter is, in order to... the first time they see a bonfire, it is kindled. And that kindling allows them all to have a long rest with no cost. It is their safe spot. That second time they wish to rest at that bonfire for that long rest, it requires a humanity. They must sacrifice a humanity, a rare item, to make sure that they can rest safely again after a big encounter. Now, as far as normal resting rules, those still apply. I still have short rests and I still have long rests. You can feel free to forego those if you choose. Short rest I would definitely still recommend. For long rests, roll on an encounter table. Same with short. If they choose to rest in a hallway in a dungeon, let them rest in a hallway in a dungeon. And from there, see if something will happen to them. And finally, the players will make the way to Firelink Shrine. It is here in Firelink Shrine where players will meet NPCs, those who can help give them advice or anything. Set this up as the hub world for players to explore. Set this up for their base of operations, which they'll be able to find secrets and venture off into other paths. Set this place up for the Firekeeper, having a one and big ally in this world that hopefully won't be taken from them, as the Firekeeper lays still, protecting that fire that will always allow players for a long rest. She is the one who's protecting and kindling the flame. So, let's talk about weapon upgrades. There are various blacksmiths that can be found throughout Lordran, and their skill to upgrade weapons and armors are truly great. To simplify the crafting in the game, I have basically broken down things to Titanite chunks and twinkling Titanite chunks. And those little lizards that you would find scavenging throughout the game, that's what they covet. In any map I create, I always will hide a crystal lizard. The crystal lizards will provide a random Titanite chunk. 1d4. I just have them roll a 1d4 on defeat, and on a 4, they drop a twinkling Titanite. The twinkling Titanite is better for boss weapons that they'll get late game, so I do set that up as a lower chance to receive those. Whereas Titanite chunks will just upgrade items to +1, 2, or 3. That will allow players to find a weapon they like and upgrade it accordingly. Only boss weapons will require twinkling Titanite. So, give your players a wish list. I personally will give them a little bit of ideas of what kind of things that a boss weapon could be, or just find out what kind of items your players really want to use. One of my players really wants a hookshot. Guess what he found later in his adventure? It's important to kind of find out what your players expect from the campaign, what they really want to use, what sounds cool to them, and build up those custom items for them. Now, that's up to you as the DM, but I do have a nice little list of items and rough ideas of what I could create to make them a homebrew weapon. So, let's start with the campaign background. Let's just set these up. Knights, average. Oops, we want a master key most likely. That will be helpful for us later. And as far as gifts, I'll show you guys a list of gifts that I've offered my players so that way and what their effects would be. And, well, let's just listen to the story first.
In the age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. Then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. Nito, the first of the dead. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty bolts peeled apart the stone spirits. The witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. And Seath the Scaleless betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more. Thus began the Age of Fire. But soon the flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now, there are only embers, and man sees not light, but only endless nights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark side.
So, this is your fate. The camera pans in. You hear screams
Yes, indeed.
of madness down this hall.
The dark sign brands the undead.
The dark sign has branded the undead. And a hollow
And in
halls
this land,
of prisoners are all throughout. You are a chosen undead.
Are corralled and led to the
And you
north.
have died and lived out your eternity here.
Where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
And this is where we're basically going to be starting the campaign. So, the way I've kind of described it out to my players is through the hall they hear the screams, the calls of other hollows. Most have lost their minds, but you have all been keeping each other sane. Having someone to talk to in this room has been a blessing. Some can't see too far in the dark, and the only bit of light you have is directly above you. The one sunlight. The knight throws down a key, and with it, "Hey, you ain't hollow, are ya? Well, free yourself up and meet me outside." With those words, you hear stomping. Massive footprints crushing up a bit. Shit. Alright, I gotta go. And you're left to solve your own. Now when the players walk through, one player, you can decide on one player to free themselves and then free the others, opening up each of the cells in the area if you choose to. Alright, so we find our players all together inside of the undead asylum. They are all in the prison cells here, and a body falls down, dropping the key for one. Well, most likely players will free each other. They'll get to know each other, and or should have known each other for some time, and eventually they'll start making their move upwards. So as we follow up our Grayson, the hollows screaming down the halls are all locked behind cells. Some may be aggressive, some may not, but as they pass through, I like to have one kind of following suit, just trickling up behind them. Now, for hollows, you can use zombies, you can use bandits, you can use anything you want. Hollows could have been anybody in life, but it is important that these characters are level 1 and stack them with 1 hit point. These enemies only have 1 hit point. So I do use minion followers a lot in this campaign. Your players are going to want to feel like badasses, and a shambling prisoner dying in 1 hit will make them feel a lot better than one that can take 3 damage. In addition, your players are currently unarmed. Their equipment is not with them, as they were locked up in prison. So I do have that as well as a restriction at the beginning. So the players start to move forward. They may want to research or look for something. There's you could throw some bookshelves and designs. And one thing I gave my players was on the table, well, they found a prisoner log, kind of giving some information about some of their companions that they can either keep for themselves. Maybe it was a little bit of somebody's backstory that I wanted. I had a player, and I had a few players' backgrounds on the table. So just being able to find some extra information on here is something good. Stumbles up, and another hollow could be playing in the puddle in comparison to the just giving him something, another threat that they can assess. They can choose to end its life quickly or not. But when they start coming up to the top, climbing the ladder, being blind from what they see, all they see is light, this hollow would be aggressive, and perhaps this one would try and grapple and throw down a character down to the bottom of the ladder. That stir would spark up the non-aggressive hollows in the hallway, and a player's first combat encounter can arise here. The party would be unarmed, but the minions only have 1 hit point. As long as they are able to hit them and punch them, or do whatever, well, they have succeeded in the combat. It's a very good. This entry hallway is a really good spot to kind of set a tone of worry in a way. They see that if the players know that they're unarmed and they know that they don't have their gear, other than the wizard or somebody who can probably use certain cantrips without any components, well, you are able. It's a scary moment. You're surrounded by a bunch of different hollows and you don't know how strong they are yet. So this sets up a good tone for the game. But the players will eventually find their first bonfire. So just like in the Dark Souls, you follow through in the hall. You may want to put that demon stomping around if you like. It's up to you. I actually chose to leave it out as I put the demon stomping above us previously. The hollow splashing in the water. And a glimmer of light from up above. And from here, they find their first bonfire as the party reaches their spot. Now, the party can take a long rest right here as if they choose with their first bonfire, or they can go through the door. And from here, a barricaded door from the side if the players choose to explore. The way I've kind of stopped it from any D&D shenanigans was it was concluded with rubble and bricks, and the passage is blocked, which leaves the party to face a big metal door. As the party opens up the door, they see that it's a large room, really empty. There's pots and vases and stalagmites, and you can see light coming up from the north. And as they come through, this is where I start to separate the tone of my game. That demon lands on one player. Up to you how you want to choose it, but that demon lands on a player and takes a massive swing with his maul on another, most likely resulting in an instant kill. So let's talk about the asylum demon. This will be their first real foe. I ended up having my party run through that area, and I more or less made it a cutscene. I gave the party a fair warning and hey, don't freak out. But there's a giant demon who falls and crushes to kill one of you. From there, the demon takes its massive maul, swinging and hitting, crushing 2 other players with a wide swing. I'm giving the reason I'm doing this to the players is I'm giving them that foresight. I want them to see the telegraphed moves of this creature. It can stomp and crush those beneath him, the booty slam. It takes a wide conal swing at everybody. I'm very descriptive on the words I want because I want them to learn and remember that, hey, this thing can hit multiple enemies. It can crush us if we land on it, and it has a pretty massive maul attack. Now, again, a level 1 party will not beat a typical demon of this caliber without some DM intervention and some weaknesses. So, I've kind of came out with a few things. I have the wind-up. When the party actually starts to fight them, we have a wind-up mechanic, which, before the Asylum Demon makes its official attacks, it winds up preparing for that attack. A player may use their reaction to make a DC 12 Dexterity saving throw. On success, the demon's attack is made with disadvantage. On fail 4 or more, the attack is made with advantage. So, it's kind of my way of giving the party a little bit of an extra chance to not get hit by this thing because it's going to crush those who get hit. So far, in 4 games of testing this, it's worked out very well. But we'll get more back to it later. So, one surviving player looks back and sees the demon staring at him through the mental gate. His friends all vanquished into white wisps from souls and flew into him. Or her. The player stands alone and moves forward ahead as there's no place but to go forward. And as the player touches a bonfire, his party comes back to life. The wisps fly out from him and the players are reborn. It is here where I have my players roll that short-term madness because, well, they just died. And this would be their second death in the asylum. One to bring him there, this one to bring him back. The demon causes the other. So one player is already going to be at a little bit of an advantage as far as, hey, I have only died once in this campaign so far, which is what brought me to the undead asylum. From here, the players will, as traditional, you need to get their shield. You need to get your gear. So, the players, you guys see an archer further down the hall. He is plummeting through arrows just one bit at a time, but to your left you see a light coming from the side. It's the armory. You rush forward, grabbing your armor, finding a shield, and inside this room you find gear, weapons, shields, armors, books, components. This is where the players will get their starting gear. And now that they have properly equipped themselves, well, let's see what they can fight. So, the archer sees you rushing forward, and, well, normally he does stuff, so you can move. Oh, God. And this one round of combat is going to fuck him up. So, the one archer rushes forward. So, ideally, the archer comes up here, and he's going to run down the hall. He's going to lay a trap. He's going to run up the stairwell. And from that stairwell, this is where I have a first few archers. So I've set this up in a couple different ways, and I wanted this to feel like an ambush. So straight ahead, as you rush forward, you come up the stairwell, archers come forward, and they start shooting. This is the first real combat encounter of the party. They'll have to fight from here. In addition to that, those who charge forward to fight with anybody who would come up here, well, on the side, a few hollows creep around to flank around and go into the tunnels. That will help thin out the herd a little bit, and at that point, it makes for a very good combat encounter for their first one. They've learned to experience ambushes that will come through. They've learned to experience traps, and that the hollows will fight and kill. And behind that, well, this seems like it'd be a good place to explore and find a crystal lizard. Setting up boxes or anything kind of thing There's a reason the hollows were drawn to this area in the first place, hiding, so it's a good spot. Now, after that combat encounter, they come forward. They may see the man who freed them broken and wounded inside this gate. The way I've kind of described it is his arm, he seems to be unconscious, bloodied. Can't quite make it out. Forward on, a boulder charges at the players, and the players need to make a dexterity saving throw as they are in a line fighting. That crashes into the prison of the knight. And some good roleplay opportunities from here. As the knight will try and allow you guys to, he'll fill you in on the world, give the players a goal.
Oh, thank goodness. I'm done for. I'll die soon.
He was going to die soon and lose his humanity.
Regrettably, but perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my... Thou who art undead art, in thine exodus from the undead asylum, maketh pilgrimage to when thou ringeth the bell of awakening. Well, now you know. Oh, an Estus flask.
Alright, the Estus flask. An Estus flask was given to each of the players. There's... In this case, so we have, if we have a campaign of 5 players, each player has been gifted an Estus flask. And so, they all have a free healing potion that can refill at Bonfires. So, we move forward. Now, the party is very likely going to save him, or try and do stuff to save him. I've had people try and cauterize the wound. I've described the knight with his arm ripped in half. He's going to bleed out and die. They don't have generation spells or anything of that magnitude to save him. They can only make him more comfortable, and they may be able to heal him, but he's still going to be bleeding out with a missing hand. They may cauterize the wound, but eventually it's just going to be too much of blood loss, so the knight will die. If you choose, do you want to figure out a way to save him? Maybe he's one of the players, if you choose to. That's up to you guys. But that's what I did. I had him die. Players now are able to clear the debris and make it to the next bonfire. And that hollow in our game, he's going to move back and flee back again. And the players, if they remember last time, that first hollow did run back and grab reinforcements. Well, why would that one not do the same if he knows he's outnumbered? Especially when it's 5-1. So archers fly, arrows fly, and coming in here. Oop. There we go. So standing in front of you is a big gate, a long way down. And at the far end, a massive raven will be sitting there waiting. Now. Whoa. The asylum demon's actually smashing things right now. That's kind of funny. So, anyway. In this room is... Well, it's an armored hollow. Okay, yeah, we can make it an actual minion if you want. Or if you want to be dramatic, then what you could do is... Hey, that one-armed knight that just died. Let's teach him the mechanics of the game that no one is truly dead. You can find him later. I know that you can find him later in the game if you chose to, but if you choose to come back, you end up fighting him anyways. But I think it's a better fit for the players. So, what I currently have my party doing, and from here, well, they find the one-armed knight that just freed them, but he is no longer with them. And now the players must choose to set him at peace again, or not. Now, one thing I did for this, because a knight, again, it's a knight enemy is going to, it's very likely going to destroy a level 1 party, or at least get a good couple kills on them. We don't want that. Again, this game is about making sure your encounters are fair. So what I started doing was, it's a one-armed knight, and in my list, well, he still has the chance to hit, but it's been greatly reduced. He has a +2 attack to hit as he's wielding a great sword. He's with one arm. He's not likely to hit. In addition to the standard 52 hit points, he's missing an arm. He's probably bleeding out a little bit. He's going to be at a standard 26 hit points. Now, what's inside the chest? If you beat him, you might be able to find a rusted iron ring. It is locked behind a sealed door. You can have your players lockpick if you choose, if they have thieves' tools. You can do whatever you might want to, but having that chest behind here gives them that incentive that this knight is guarding something. Now, from there, players will probably defeat that, and now we are brought back to fight the asylum demon. So as the players march on, killing once again the same knight who has been born and helped them. Players find themselves down here and to fight an asylum demon. Now, players will very likely want to cheese their way up there and stay up there if you want. You can do that by all means, but this asylum demon in the game will actually, well, he'll jump up and try and smash. And let's take a look at his mindset. Big wind-up right there. It's a big swing and a miss, and that would have hit multiple party members. No problem. Those are those wide swings. So being able to hit multiple enemies is really what this enemy's about. There's that maul smash. That's going to crush anybody below him. If I'm sitting under his feet, big swing. And obviously your party can't really dodge through it. I was trying to get him to booty slam me, but I don't know if he's going to. Nope. Okay, fine. Well, the booty slam if they're hugging his butt. And it's a good way to get a dex save. But the party will go through, they'll fight, and they'll win, as they are fully geared. Now, one thing to give the party an extra advantage if they choose to. All those enemies that they've been fighting, they would have been claiming souls. For getting those souls, in this, they can level up. So if the party chooses to backtrack with those souls and open up the gate, which I forgot to do, then at this point, with the amount of enemies they fought, there should be just enough souls for them to level up one character to level 2. It's going to spark some conversation. It's going to spark some good roleplay opportunities where the player's like, well, I should have it because I can do this, I can do this. Like, if I can regain my former strength, I can help us slay that demon. And up to you and the party if they choose to proceed. So they'll either fight that demon head on as a full level 1 party, or they'll backtrack to get their souls and encounters. For the asylum demon, I have kind of registered him as a CR3. That is 700 souls they will gain, so that means 2 other level characters after the defeat will be able to level up as well. And from here, I think this is a good spot. They will start to rush forward. The characters will level up. They'll defeat the asylum demon, and from here, their journey, the real journey, will begin. They'll be able to open up the big metal door, blocking their escape. At the far end, they will find a massive raven sitting there and watching them. Curiosity will likely perk them in, and they'll start being drawn towards the edge of the cliff. As they move forward, the raven cocks. And at the far end, you can see mountains, you can see rivers, you can see castles, but you are near the end of the world. At the far end, the raven speaks up
in the
and grabs the party.
It is stated.
There's one big raven in this one, but having multiple big ravens may be good enough to bring them back. And the ravens will drag you, and grab you, and fly you to your new home as you embark on this pilgrimage.
To the land of the ancient lords.
If you guys liked this, please feel free to subscribe and like. Just give me any kind of an indication that you want to see more of this. I'm going to be playing my new campaign with these players. I've gotten halfway through my campaign, but I have published this on Home Brewery. Feel free to read through a little bit more in detail. But hopefully this shows you guys that if you love a game, bring it into a D&D world. I've done it twice now, once with Ocarina of Time and once with Dark Souls, and both have been very memorable campaigns for D&D. So hopefully this inspires some of you guys to make something that you love, and appreciate it, and catch you guys next time.